Welcome to Bupsa's Dharma Lounge, a time and a place to explore all things Dharma. It's been argued that contemporary mainstream Western Buddhism has been co-opted by neoliberal ideology. In this episode, I'll deconstruct the description of an online course that was offered by a celebrity Buddhist teacher and hosted by Tricycle, the Buddhist journal. Through this analysis, we might uncover the unquestioned neoliberal ideological assumptions that permeate so much of contemporary Buddhism and the secularized mindfulness movement. Hi, I'm Bupsa, Frank Jude, and before taking our dive into this episode's topic, I'd like to thank those who've supported this podcast by subscribing, liking, reviewing, commenting, sending emails on the various platforms. If you're listening to the audio version on Apple or Spotify or Anchor or any of the other platforms it might be on, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and commenting there. You could also leave questions or suggestions for future episodes. I also wish to thank those who have offered dana, especially Jabuna Allison Brown, Chatra Sandy Greenberg, Ilchu Andre Talbot, Gabion Sally Weber, and Ine Joe Willers. If you wish to support this podcast through a dana offering, please use the link in the description. So, in looking at the description of this online course that was offered through Tricycle, the course was entitled The Whole Path, Kindness, Meditation, and Wisdom. We see it begins pretty innocuously. The course description begins, "This course will cover each aspect of the Buddha's Eightfold Path to guide you toward the transformative wisdom that it is to be uncovered." It then offers the first two of 6 units. The first unit is entitled Ethics as a Source of Self-Respect, and it's described in this way. You will be shown how ethical conduct supports a healthy view of ourselves, and in doing so, supports our meditative development. Unit 2 is entitled The 5 Precepts, and it's described as the Buddha recommended that lay practitioners abide by 5 simple guidelines. They provide us with an opportunity to reflect on our values and to train our self-discipline in ways that gently support our well-being. So I hope you can see right there, when you're framing ethical training as a source of self-respect, that already we're really emphasizing a kind of atomistic self-individual identity that is the core aspect of neoliberal ideology. The whole focus on ethical training is being presented here as simply about the development of self-respect and, quote, a healthy view of ourselves. And its purpose and function is to do no more than support our meditative development. Then in Unit 2, the actual precepts that encode the ethical training of the Buddha are presented as 5 simple guidelines, whose purpose is, again, nothing more than reflecting on our values in order to ultimately support our well-being. So again, everything is mentioning self, 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 our well-being, our values, our this, that, and the other thing. Each statement here is all about the self. Ethical training is being presented as having its purpose located in the individual. And there's no mention about the fact that living within societal structures, the Buddhist ethical precepts are designed to help us investigate, question, uncover, transform those very relationships. There's not even a hint that ethical behavior has any relational implications and functions. Ethics here is being presented as a purely individual matter and for the sake of the individual, and thus serves neoliberal ideology. However, the Buddha presented the ethical training as being about our societal relationships. For one example, it was specifically stated that all those who go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the three jewels, should avoid all business in weapons. This is more than sadly ironic, considering that the US military now offers mindfulness to, quote, enhance performance, and to deal with the stress and the consequences of the stress that is caused by its very structure and mission. Apparently, the modern neoliberal Buddhist cannot countenance anything so radical as criticizing or even rejecting militarism. And so it makes ethics all about feeling good about oneself and simply bear attention to the present moment. I've even heard one well-known Buddhist teacher say that he would feel better knowing that an employee of a munitions corporation was, quote, this is a direct quote, mindfully making bombs than if they were doing so unmindfully. I'm sure the people who the bombs fall on would really see a big difference. Considering that the Buddha explicitly stated that any dealing in arms was by definition not right livelihood, the very notion that mindfulness is something to be brought into the military is a bit of an oxymoronic delusion. Now, I am personally supportive of the moves that have been made to add mindfulness to the treatment palette for soldiers returning from military engagement who are suffering from PTSD. But I think we should really question the use of mindfulness to train to make better and more efficient snipers. Elizabeth Stanley is a former military intelligence officer, and she is the creator of the mindfulness-based mind fitness training, MMFT, which is offered to soldiers about to be deployed for combat. Her description of her program makes it chillingly clear that the purpose of the training is to ultimately support the soldier's core objective, to kill. She writes, a true warrior must be able to still her body and mind to call forth strength, exhibit endurance during harsh environmental conditions, have awareness of herself, others, and the wider environment, so she can make discerning choices, access compassion for herself, her compatriots, her adversary, and the locals where she is deployed, and show self-control during provocation so that she doesn't overreact. And yet, if the moment demands, she must also have the capacity to kill cleanly, without hesitation, and without remorse. To kill freely, without remorse. And by the way, in the corporate culture of capitalism, we also see many corporations now offering mindfulness to its employees in order to help the employees deal with the stresses of work. But in doing so, they again are basically situating the full cause of stress in the neoliberal subject, the employee, rather than even a cursory examination of the assumptions, the expectations, the institutional corporate structures that are themselves factors causing and exasperating employee stress. Unit 3 is entitled Concentration, and it's described as, we will learn to gather our scattered mental energies and settle them, find tranquility, and empower ourselves to take action. How concentration arises and can be cultivated will be explained. Unit 4 is mindfulness, the ability to really know what it is we are experiencing is a critical ingredient for deep insight to arise. You will be helped to understand and apply mindfulness as you bring receptivity and a kind, curious awareness to your practice. Now, concentration and mindfulness are two faculties, two powers that need to be integrated for all Buddhist meditation. And so this sounds quite good. But we could also go a little bit deeper and look beneath the surface to notice that embedded in this description is a hidden assumption of a kind of detached mind, awareness as a kind of thing from which we can sit and view reality, right? There's no hint that awareness, consciousness, the mind, which is conceptualized as mental formations in early Buddhism, is not really a thing. And that, like all other phenomena, it's a construct, very much conditioned by the web of social relations. Now, what do I mean by this? When the Buddha taught Satipatthana, which I translated as the domains of mindfulness, he included in each domain the social interpersonal relationship, which is why we see repeated over and over again throughout the sutta that the practitioner must train to be, quote, aware internally, aware externally, and aware both internally and externally, right? Of the body, of feelings, of the mind, right? So what is it to be aware of the body internally? Well, that's me being aware of my body, the postures of my body, the parts and elements of my body, and the activities of my body as it moves throughout the day, right? Activities included by the Buddha in the sutta are getting dressed, getting undressed, eating, walking, uh, using the toilet. I mean, all these different activities, right? And realizing how it is impacted by the environment and the ever-changing situations. Right? By bringing attention to how my body is affected by the social and physical environment, it is clear that mindfulness, as taught in the early Buddhist traditions, includes awareness of relations, because there is no body that exists independently of myriad other factors. It goes on to say again, awareness of the body externally. And that is me being aware of the bodies of others. It's me being aware of your body. What does your body say to me? If I see your posture, what is it saying to me? Right? In looking at your body, I can question, what might you be feeling, thinking, perceiving? What, in our culture, does a black or a brown body experience or feel? What does a body gendered as male or female or non-binary express? What about other abled bodies? And then finally, and very importantly, awareness of the body both internally and externally asks me to investigate how our bodies relate to each other in our societal structures. How do our bodies impact each other as we move within this wider culture? Absolutely none of this enters into the practice of neoliberal Buddhism, which focuses almost exclusively on the atomistic individual, which doesn't even exist. In the course description, in the episode description below, I have a link to a Google-sponsored event, and I'd like you to pay attention to how the moderator avoids any questioning of what protesters were saying and might be feeling. Right? It's a Google event. Protesters disrupt the event, and the moderator avoids any real reference to what the protesters might be feeling or experiencing. He frames the disruption as an opportunity for the audience members to mindfully observe what they, the audience members, felt and what they experienced in reaction to the protest. It doesn't occur to the moderator to even suggest that the audience could include at least questioning what the emotions, perceptions, or motivations of the protesters might be. To do so would to be actually centering the protesters' point of view rather than just the feelings of the audience members. And that would then require the audience members to look into the tech industry's Google's effect on the local real estate and the homelessness situation in the Bay Area. And that just can't be allowed. Right? Mindfulness is not mere bare attention, as it has often been reduced to by many contemporary teachers, nor is it ethically neutral, as it's often taught, right? No judgments. But rather, it's a broader investigation of causal relations based upon the prime directive of ahimsa, or non-harming. Rather than the mere non-judgmental observation of some hypothesized atomistic self, mindfulness looks at how the present moment arises. It looks at the causal chain of conditions that lead to the present moment. Why? In order to gain clarity so that we can end the causes and conditions that lead to dukkha, unease, pain, suffering. And equally important, to persist in those factors that lead to greater sukha, ease, pleasure, happiness. It's completely horizontal and relational, and not at all this atomistic, pay attention to the present moment. Unit 5 is described as the three characteristics. Through mindfulness, the Buddha saw that all experiences have three characteristics. Seeing these characteristics for ourselves is decisive. We begin to loosen up. We don't take life so personally. The significance of these characteristics and how they free us will be explained. Notice, again, no mention of what these three characteristics are, and I'll get to that. Unit 6 is entitled A Life of Wisdom. With these insights, we will see so much more of who we are and how connected we are to others. This will inevitably lead to the development of greater love and compassion in our lives. There's an assumption there that paying so much attention to the individual, we're going to see how our connection, but the sutta makes it clear that we have to look outside of ourselves as well. But again, when we read a cursory reading of these, there doesn't seem to be that much that we can complain about. But notice, along with the detached awareness, we find implied a detached atomistic self, which is free from all social structures and therefore free to choose what social relationships the self is going to enter into, right? And that's not the reality we live in, right? But again, as I said before, the three characteristics aren't even enumerated. And for those of you who might not know what these three characteristics of existence are, they are anicca, which means impermanence, that all phenomena, everything is impermanent, constantly changing. Anatta, not self. Again, all phenomena lack any self nature that is independent, autonomous, and persistent. And then the third characteristic is dukkha, which is distress, dissatisfaction, suffering, pain, right? And so the three characteristics of existence are saying that all experience is characterized by impermanence, not self, and distress. I'm thinking that perhaps without the spin that is most often given by purveyors of neoliberal Buddhism, these three characteristics of life don't sell too well in a market economy. So I want to be clear. I am making this critique in a way that I don't want you to think that I'm implying that this teacher, who I am not naming because I'm not just calling them out, because it's not just about this person, right? I am not saying that they know they are propagating neoliberal ideology or that they are doing it purposefully. I am not denying that they believe in the truth and benefit of what they're offering. I'm most definitely not saying that this individual is an example of cynical bad faith. Though I want to be clear, I think that there are some out there who are scamming in such a cynical way. No, what I am saying is that this is pretty much what all Buddhist celebrity teachers are offering. And it's symptomatic of how fully neoliberal ideology has been interpolated into the mainstream contemporary secular understanding of Buddhism. And while I'm at it, make no mistake, this neoliberal ideology has also fully penetrated contemporary yoga, right, the Instagramification of yoga, as well as the so-called New Age spirituality. As in the yoga community, as in the New Age spiritual community, contemporary Buddhist and mindfulness practitioners tend to look to these ancient teachings and see only their own self-image and desires reflected back, reassuring them that what they already think and believe is what the ancient yogis taught. Right? It doesn't really question the beliefs that we might have. It's another symptom of the dumbing down anti-intellectualism that permeates so much of contemporary spirituality. Now, sadly, there are those, but there are the few, who are willing to make the effort to actually engage with these potentially radical teachings in order to deconstruct, to question, and critique the conventional social order, in order to see what might be learned through such engagement, rather than using the teachings and practices as merely a self-reflecting mirror, right? And those few are often marginalized and ostracized. I've seen the concept of right speech used against people who are critical. But critique is a practice, and one that's very necessary. And Bupps' Dharma Lounge is and will continue to be a place for such questioning. If you find any benefit from Bupps' Dharma Lounge, if you've been enjoying any of these episodes, I hope that you will support the podcast by subscribing, commenting, liking, reviewing, and sharing. And of course, any dana that you might like to offer is always gratefully and fully appreciated. Thank you, and stay well.